In a club with someone, and I'm pipe down. Shawty got me out too high. I be stepping on the beach in some white ones. Can't control, I think I'm too fly.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics. Hit the like button and subscribe for more content just like this. And so we're looking at pretty much what may be the finalized electoral map for the 2024 election. Donald Trump getting 312 electoral college votes to Harris's 226. Now, this compared to the last few elections was a landslide in the electoral college. If you look at the updated results on the appms.com, you can see Trump is winning all the swing states by essentially a point or higher. You can see here there were no tilt states this cycle. I don't know why they have Wisconsin as 0.87. On Decision Desk, it shows it as like a full point win. Maybe there was a tabulation error on Decision Desk. But if we look at like the past elections, you see Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona were all tilt and were all decided by literally just a couple thousand votes across the three states. 2020, about 80,000 votes decided it for Donald Trump. And we now see that the former president has won the election by like a combined like 250,000 vote margin, probably even higher than that across all of the battleground states. So compared to the last two elections, this was not close at all. And if you look at my final margins and compare them to some of the margins you see on the map, my average error is roughly, give or take, about a 3.5 point error nationwide across all of the swing states. I got roughly 48 out of 50 correct. I only had Minnesota and New Hampshire going Democrat. Those were my fatal, predictions, or going Republican, excuse me. Those were my fatal predictions. However, if there were blue states that would have fallen into Trump's column, they would have been Minnesota and New Hampshire before New Mexico or Virginia or a Maine at large, like some people were anticipating. So even though I got the calls incorrect because I overestimated Trump in the popular vote by about a point or two, I was still able to predict that those two would have actually fallen before any of the battleground states that were blue, and New Mexico and Virginia had leftward trends a little bit higher than we expected here at On Point Politics. But overall, 48 out of 50 states correct, got all the states correct that Donald Trump won, even the state of Nevada. And it looks like my Nevada and Arizona margins are still going to hold up pretty strong from my forecast, especially Arizona, where Donald Trump massively outperformed. And I was one of the only people that kept saying that Arizona could vote to the right of Georgia, despite my final model not actually having that. But I was very adamant about the fact that Arizona could have voted to the right of Georgia this election cycle. And that's exactly what happened, and by far, because Donald Trump actually outperformed even my expectation with Hispanic voters. If you actually look at the exit polling data, if you look at the breakdown by race, it's actually pretty crazy. It also seems like the electorate was about an R+4 electorate, as you can see right here. So the electorate was super Republican friendly. And when you look at the race breakdown, Donald Trump won whites by 16. So he didn't do that much better with whites compared to 2020 because he only won them by about 13 or 14 points. The group he did a lot better with was particularly Latino voters. That's the group he did significantly better with that really pushed him over in some of these battleground states. And of course, him doing better with whites did. But these gains that he's made in a lot of places, like in Illinois, for example, I mean, he only lost it by 8.6%, which is very close to the margin that I actually had in the state of Illinois. Same thing in New York. He lost the state by about 11 points. I had him losing it by about 10 points. A state like New Hampshire, I had him basically winning it by 1. He lost it by about 4. But again, a state like New Hampshire, a 1 point difference is actually quite a few votes. Like literally, she only won by about 30,000 votes. So again, technically within somewhat of a margin of error. Same thing in Minnesota, only 100,000 vote victory for Kamala Harris there. So that's kind of what we're looking at And funny enough, if you actually go ahead and look at the expected odds for all of the states, if you were to hypothetically plug in my model and look at all of the odds for each of these states flipping to one candidate or another, my odds model, the expected odds for all of the states that I had actually were all correct. It would have predicted 312 out of to 226. So again, a model, because I like posting my exact prediction. I think it's a little bit better to do that than just putting a model, because you can kind of cope out and saying, oh, look, my model predicted this outcome this many times, but I'm owning up to my exact prediction saying, hey, I only got 2 states wrong in my final prediction. And you can see October 26 was roughly around the last day that I finalized my map. I should have probably waited, and probably next cycle I will wait to the final day, because if I had waited for the final day, I probably actually would have gotten a lot closer to the real result here, and my margins probably would have been a little bit better in some of the swing states, but that's fine. But overall, I was one of the only forecasters that said Donald Trump would have won the popular vote. He would win the Electoral College relatively easily, that he was at least going to get over 312. That's also something I kept saying, that he was at least going to get 312 Electoral College votes, and that he had the opportunity to expand into some of these deep blue states, which he did. I mean, he lost Virginia by 200,000. He lost Minnesota by 100,000 votes, New Hampshire by like 40,000. He came close into some of these battleground states. He came pretty close despite the margin here. And you can even see here in states like, the Rust Belt, he won Pennsylvania by 2.1%. That is what it's looking like with 95% of the vote reporting, which is exactly what my model for election I had him finishing off at when we called the state of Pennsylvania for him at about 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Michigan, it looks like he's going to win it by about 1.3%. California is reporting more votes, and he's already exceeded his 2020 vote total in the counting of the ballots so far. And there's still a couple ballots left to count out of Arizona and out of California, Oregon, Washington, and even to an extent, even Utah has some ballots left to count, and even Colorado does as well. But we see here in Alaska, he won by a little bit over 15 points. In Hawaii, she's only going to win by about 23 points in the state of Hawaii. You can see in Texas, he won by 14. Miami-Dade, look at this. He won Miami-Dade by almost as good as DeSantis did. He won Duval. He won Pinellas by almost 6 points. Hillsborough by about 3 points. He flipped Osceola County, which is the highest population of Puerto Ricans in the entire country, and he was still able to win the county relatively easily. He won Seminole County by almost 4. Orlando only lost it by roughly 13 points. So really masterclass performance, in the state of Florida right now. Texas, he gained a lot in these southern border counties, and even actually almost flipped Houston back into the Republican column, which is absolutely insane. Tarrant County, he flipped that pretty easily, made gains with Hispanic voters in a place like Texas and Florida, and even improved in places like Ohio and Iowa. He's going to win Ohio by roughly 12, and I think Iowa's almost about a 14-point win. It's going to be like a 13-ish point victory. So he did improve, and, forget about that Harris plus 3 Iowa poll. I mean, I was way more accurate. I had Iowa plus 16 for Trump. He had ended up being about plus 13 and change for Trump, so pretty close on the margin there. Virginia, I had it at about a point for Harris. She ended up winning by about 5, so again, within margin of error. Colorado, I think I had Harris plus 7. She's going to win by like 10 or 11. Oregon, about roughly plus, give or take here, it's actually going to end up being about plus 13. I think I had this at Harris plus like 9 or 10, something like that. Washington is one of them that I was like super off on. I didn't expect it to move to the left of where it was. It's actually the only state in the country that moved to the left, which kind of surprised me. I thought a place like Vermont or Massachusetts would have been the state to move to the left, but it seems like Washington was the one that happened. In California, I mean, he just made huge gains in California. I mean, he just really did a number on her. In a place like California, you could see that she narrowly flipped back the Nevada County in California from the other night, but he made huge gains in a state like California, and even a state like New York. I mean, he improved massively. I mean, he's got 27% in the Bronx. Queens, he got 38%. City of New York, he almost hit 18. Kings, he's got about roughly 29%. Suffolk, he won that by 10. Nassau County, he won that by about 5. So he's done extremely well for himself. In Richmond, he won by 30 points. He did very well for himself in a place like New York, and, gains for Republicans could be made in a place like New York in the future. He barely underperformed Lee Zeldin in the state of New York. So very interesting. And New Jersey is the new swing state. We could see here, she only won the state by 5 percentage points with 88%, and it looks like a 5.5 percentage point win. It may end up being the margin that I suggested it's actually going to end up being, but she got ultimately destroyed. Vernon Supreme actually got 0.2% of the vote in Nevada, 900 votes. That's hilarious. But we can see here, overall, just a landslide performance from the former president. He was able to improve with whites. He did a little better with blacks. He didn't do as good with them as I expected. That's why I overestimated him in places like Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, because I thought he was going to do far better with the black vote, but that's not what ended up happening at all. He did way better with the other / ethnic groups category. He won them by 14. He improved with Asians quite substantially. And you can see here, with religion, you see no affiliation. You see Harris plus like 50 or something. Jewish voters, he got roughly about 2% of those. Protestants / other Christian, he won by almost 30 points. Catholics, he won those by 18 points, and a lot of them are in the Northeast, and that's why he was able to improve there so much. You could see that there was a gender gap, but not as much as people were thinking, and he actually did better with men than Harris did with women, believe it or not. And he actually outright won white women too, believe it or not. So that's crazy as well. He actually won unmarried men by 2 points. That's crazy. Married women, you could see that roughly, give or take, a 3-point victory. Men with children, a 23-point win. Women with children was Harris plus 5. Men, no children under 18, Trump plus 10, and you saw women with no children under 18, Harris plus 10. Race by gender, gender by race, you could see he actually won white women outright, and that's the largest part of the electorate there. He got over 20% with black men. He outright won Latino men, which is crazy. He actually outright won that category as well. And you can see with age groups, Harris only won 18 to 44 by 5, and 45 or older was roughly, give or take, a 6-point win. College degree, you can see the electorate was 57% no college to 43% college. So college grads did turn out more this cycle. And you see a 13-point victory for Kamala Harris with that group. But Trump won no college by 14, a huge improvement over a very, very big improvement over Joe Biden's performance. And we could see here voters who voted for the first time broke for Trump by 13 points. So new voters were the reason why Trump was able to make so many gains just across the map. Even voters who hadn't even voted before, the no category was already Trump plus 2. So even voters from the 2020 electorate were already swinging back to Trump either way. Have any children under 18, you could see that group massively broke towards Donald Trump as of right now. Union household, she only won that group by 8 points, which is crazy. Only an 8-point victory with that group. That is absolutely insane. Trump got 33% with voters of color, according to these exit polls. And you can see here that Harris actually did better with the LGBTQ community this time. Biden actually didn't do as well with this group in 2020, which was interesting. You see, that's only about 8% of the electorate. She won that group by a pretty decent amount. But you see here, he got about 13% of the LGBTQ community, which is strange. You see here in the last few days, in the last week, Trump led these groups while in October and September, voters decided to vote for Harris. But everybody who decided before September, Trump won those voters by a point. And you could see he was probably inevitably always going to end up winning the popular vote no matter what. You see he has a 46% approval rating. So that's interesting. And you see, again, this is what I've been talking about. He overperforms his approval rating. Look at this. People who found him unfavorable, 9% of those people voted for Trump. There is a decent amount of the electorate who do not like Donald Trump, but still voted for him because they approve of his performance as president. This was something that a lot of these election prognosticators were missing in their forecast. I wonder what her screening was. She came back at 47% favorable, but you see, look at this. 90 people who found her favorable, 3% here. People who found her unfavorable, you see that some people ended up voting for her regardless. And so she technically had a higher approval rating than Donald Trump in the exit polling, but he has a tendency to outperform his job approval rating. You could see 47% here. She's actually going to get roughly about 47% of the vote when everything is said and done. So again, that's what you're seeing in the Electoral College there. You see, look at this, 2020 vote, 44%. So we went into the electorate with a Biden +1 2020 elector. That's basically what happened. And you saw Trump had some crossover vote with Biden 2020 voters. Another candidate from 2020, a lot of those third-party voters actually broke Trump this cycle, and people who did not vote Trump +4 is about there. And we see that Biden's job approval is literally 40%, completely disastrous. Like, Trump literally would have won the popular vote by 10 points if this wasn't the case. Like, if Biden was the candidate, he literally would have won by like 10 points in the popular vote, and probably would have flipped states like Illinois. He would have flipped New York. He probably would have even flipped Delaware and like Rhode Island and Connecticut and New Hampshire, Maine, Virginia, New Mexico, Colorado, and Oregon probably could have even flipped into Trump's column in a 10-point victory in the Electoral College. It would have gotten very ugly, and I would have been one of the only people you could see from July 16th right here. You saw that I had Trump winning the popular vote by 7 points, him getting 347. Things probably would have gotten worse as time went on for Joe Biden, because Trump's approval rating went up after the assassination attempts and whatnot. And so you saw here, I was one of the only forecasters on YouTube and in the entire space to say that Biden basically had no chance at winning the Electoral College, and even had some states like Illinois and New Jersey within lean margins if this was actually a scenario. It even had California under 15 for Biden, and she's only winning the state by 18 points. And so if his approval rating, Biden's, was 7 points worse than Kamala Harris in these exit polls, then more than likely he probably would have only won California by 15 points. This is probably what I would have actually seen for a battleground map if this would have been the election. Trump probably would have won the Sun Belt all likely and safe. Iowa and Ohio probably wouldn't have been 15-point wins, because Biden has somewhat better appeal with white working class voters in the Rust Belt. Wisconsin may have not even been a 5-point win, but states like Minnesota, Illinois, Virginia, Connecticut, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, New Mexico would have 100% been in play for Donald Trump in that election cycle if Biden would have been the candidate. And you see it right here. His approval rating was absolutely disastrous. And so, guys, this is basically it. Donald Trump won in a landslide fashion, won the popular vote. Margins on my end weren't perfect, but he still ended up performing up to expectations. And I was more accurate than 99% of forecasters in the space going into this election. If you guys enjoy election coverage and analysis just like this, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.